Thank you. A man, a scholar, with an unusual human destiny before him, paces in a close and cluttered room. He says, I've read, alas, through philosophy, medicine, and jurisprudence too, and to my grief theology with ardent labor studied through. Poor fool, no wiser than before. Faust, frustrated cynic who storms around the beginning of Goethe's epic work in an academic funk, would have found many sympathetic souls at Macalester College. Smoking hand-rolled cigarettes behind the fogged and frosty window at Dunn Brothers, Faust and his fellow intellectuals could probably find the time, between chess games and Kona refills, to lambast the significance of a 4-year liberal arts education. What do we pay nearly $50,000 for? What is there to show for 4 years' worth of research, all-nighters, and Kagan nutrition? Is it now just a dog-eat-dog job market where no one really cares about much except for the reputation of your college? And will graduate school make any difference? Thus they would grumble, taking delight in disenchanting young Wagners with tales of rainy springfests. On the other hand, Dr. Pangloss, the eternal optimist in Voltaire's Candide, would have also found himself an admirable contingent of followers, gathered in the increasingly smoke-free air of the student union, discussing metaphysico-theologico cosmology while waiting for a pizza. Pangloss would prove that this is the best of all possible worlds and campuses. Look at the new library. Think of the diverse and intimate education we have received as opposed to those poor but deserving souls who must attend inferior and impersonal institutions. Remember that we have 6 Rhodes Scholars to our credit. The world is on the edge of its seat waiting to see what we graduates will choose to do. Raising high their voices, this band of merry Candides will probably end up working for some admissions or public relations office. Now, of course, I do not mean to discount the diversity of this graduating class by implying there are only 2 kinds of students at Macalester. Far from it. We are literature personified. We are Don Quixotes fighting against the ignorance of evil. We are Mrs. Dalloways reflecting on the swirl of activity all around us. We are invisible women and men struggling for identity and community. We are a veritable assortment of Canterbury pilgrims, each with our own distinct story to tell. But Faust and Pangloss, to me at least, represent polarized attitudes towards Macalester and a 4-year liberal arts education, and therefore it is interesting to imagine and compare their views. When I think of my time at Macalester, I often find Faust and Pangloss peering over my shoulders, one urging a scatological satire, and the other inspiring religious praise of this institution with which I will forever be associated. To me, this indicates the diversity of opinions which are fostered, and more importantly, accepted here. Too often at official events, such as commencement ceremonies, where public image and proper taste are manifest to an unnatural and stifling degree, we only get the Panglossian, candy-coated vision of college. I think that cheats us out of the depth and value which comes from accepting the Faustian side of our higher education pact. We may not all think in literary metaphors, but to say that there is only one acceptable image for a graduating class is to contradict the value of diversity championed by Macalester with courses in fields such as minority, international, and women's studies. We wouldn't be here if we didn't admire Macalester College. Ask a senior whether he or she would make the same choice of colleges given the opportunity, and chances are that the answer would be yes. I know mine would be, because there's a sense of wonder and at the same time practicality at Macalester. The library itself is a perfect celebration of that wonder, but it is very obvious. I also think about the speakers I've heard, from Supreme Court Chief Justice Warren Burger to Abby Hoffman, and recently Carlos Fuentes. I remember playing trumpet with a jazz band during Henry Brandt's grandiose Northern Lights over the Twin Cities composition, written specifically for the 100th anniversary of the college 3 years ago. And there are personal wonders from the practical staff over the financial aid office who regularly untangle red tape much more mystical than Faust's incantations, to the individual professors who untangle students' minds and have continually surprised me by their kindness and encouragement. All good, all important, all more valuable than any praise or monetary value can measure are these wonders of Macalester College, and they are justly celebrated. But, as if to balance the scales a little closer to the mean of reality, we all realize that this is no earthly paradise, especially during January. Macalester is no academic Disneyland where Pangloss could proudly inscribe above the union doors, "Welcome to the happiest place on earth." There are those lucky few, it is true, who can ignore the exorbitant amount of money, necessary to finance this select education. And I suppose there might be someone who can say that she or he has never been disappointed by an administrative policy decision, perhaps regarding tenure or smoking regulations, or been offended by a Mac Weekly article involving some cryptic inside joke. In addition, we all know that there's a certain amount of unnecessary bureaucracy at this intimate institution, not to mention foot dragging. And every now and then we see the tired faces of previous graduates who have yet to find their niches. All troubling, all irritating, and all just as real as the wonder are these elements of McAllister education. I think it would be overly Panglossian to ignore those who are graduating with this institution's 100th class, feeling not only joy and a sense of accomplishment, but also a certain uneasiness about the future. Faust would take the good qualities of McAllister for granted, concentrating his efforts on exposing the flaws and the imperfections. His scientific search for an educational philosopher's stone, which could transform the rough metal of our pre-collegiate selves into shiny golden geniuses, is also the long-range activity of all faculty planning. And this furious preparation is directing us towards what? A liberal arts education is occasionally criticized for shielding students from the real world. Most of us have heard the argument from skeptical relatives or friends. Those of us who do not immediately go on to graduate school must begin the process of job searches, and for myself at least, student loan payments. In order to make use of our valuable education and still support ourselves, we realize there must be compromises. Pangloss doesn't worry, knowing everything will come out as it's supposed to, and glad that he can begin attending class reunions. Faust, however, is greatly disillusioned as he realizes that integrating fractions or quoting Shakespeare won't necessarily pay the NSP bill. Our time in college has been touched with defensiveness, characterized by the response to Alan Bloom's The Closing of the American Mind, and by the recent Liberal Arts on Trial series of discussion sponsored by the college. Concern about the accepted canon of literature, declining academic standards, and the increasingly powerful feminist perspective in all disciplines is changing what it means to be liberally educated. I want to be able to find a way to be critical and yet optimistic when I look at the meaning of my past time at McAllister and my future. Perhaps it is the discovery of that meaning, whether we study English, history, mathematics, economics, medicine, and jurisprudence too, as Faust said, which is the real, immediate real-world challenge for us as graduates. Faust and Pangloss, due to the impeccable insight of our Office of Residential Life, are most likely roommates. There have been stranger combinations. After all, they are both continental European students with wide intellectual backgrounds. But more importantly, they represent something about McAllister and life in general, which is known to all liberal arts graduates. And that is that there are two sides to everything. And a four-year liberal arts education has its reassuring and disconcerting aspects. Amidst the hoopla surrounding this graduating class, I believe that most of our feelings about the time we've spent at McAllister are rich and personal, not to be thrust upon a captive audience. But some of them go further than just simple nostalgia. We are critical as well as appreciative of the McAllister experience. Those who have taught us would expect no less. Within most members of this graduating class, there is both a touch of Faust and a hint of Pangloss. Unbridled ambition, which frequently meets disappointment, and good-natured optimism, regardless of the facts. In conclusion, if we recognize both of these characteristics, if we acknowledge the presence of Faust and Pangloss in this graduating class, I believe that is the first step in understanding the whole of our college experience, blending criticism with idealism and providing a meaningful testament to our McAllister liberal arts education. Thank you.